Months after the tragic shooting of Lil Jeff, speculation about who was responsible for his death grew, eventually leading to the arrest of Trap City Rob, a well-known figure in a rival gang. The arrest was initially seen as a break in the case, giving the community hope that justice would be served. However, what followed the arrest soon escalated into a series of events that would set off one of the most brutal gang wars in Chicago's history. The case's aftermath and the release of Trap City Rob have raised questions about the tangled nature of gang loyalties, the difficulty of securing convictions in gang-related crimes, and the deep ties between Chicago's street violence and its thriving rap scene. Lil Jeff's murder was part of the ongoing conflict between rival gangs in Chicago. The circumstances surrounding his death were as tragic as they were chilling, reflecting the brutal realities of gang violence in the city. On an ordinary day, Lil Jeff found himself in the middle of a violent gang confrontation known as a drill, a term that refers to a premeditated attack orchestrated by one gang on another. Lil Jeff's death came after a series of events that included a gun battle with a rival gang member. Video footage from the scene captured the chaotic moments leading up to his murder, but the videos were inconclusive about the identity of the shooter. While the footage depicted the clash and showed Lil Jeff chasing down an opponent who fled into a nearby house, it was someone else who came out of the house and shot him. That person was allegedly Trap City Rob. Trap City Rob, whose real name was Robert Coleman, was apprehended shortly after the incident, and for a moment it seemed like the police were finally on the right track. He was well known within his rival gang and had a reputation for violence and intimidation. With the arrest, there was a glimmer of hope that the community might finally get some closure. However, as the case progressed, the challenges of prosecuting a gang-related crime quickly became apparent. Despite the severity of the charges, the case began to unravel in the absence of solid evidence. Although there was video footage of the altercation, it did not definitively prove that Trap City Rob was the shooter. Furthermore, many of the witnesses who could have testified against him were intimidated into silence by the fear of retaliation. Gang members are known for protecting one another, and this network of loyalty and fear made it extremely difficult to gather the necessary evidence for a conviction. As the investigation stalled, the authorities decided to release Trap City Rob, a move that raised serious concerns about the influence of gangs on the justice system. The release of Trap City Rob highlighted the insidious nature of gang protection networks in Chicago. Members of rival gangs are often shielded from legal consequences by their own communities, who employ a variety of methods to keep law enforcement at bay. These methods include witness intimidation, providing false alibis, and tampering with evidence. This culture of protection creates an environment where the fear of retaliation outweighs the desire to seek justice, and the legal system struggles to hold gang members accountable for their actions. Lil Jeff's murder was a tragic reminder of the broader issue of gang violence that has plagued Chicago for decades. The city, which is known for its rich cultural and musical history, is also infamous for the level of violence that stems from its gang conflicts. This violence has taken a particular toll on the city's rap scene, where many young artists have been caught in the crossfire between rival gangs. The stories of Lil Jeff, King Von, FBG Duck, and Lil Jojo are just a few examples of the many talented young rappers whose lives have been cut short due to the violence that surrounds them. King Von, whose real name was David Bennett, grew up in Chicago's South Side, an area known for its gang violence. Von's life was forever altered when his father was murdered when he was just 11 years old. This traumatic event shaped his worldview and influenced his music. Despite the hardships he faced, Von found a way to channel his experiences into rap, using his lyrics to tell stories about life in the streets. His rise to fame came after he was released from prison in 2017, and he quickly became one of Chicago's most promising young rappers. King Von's breakthrough came with the release of his hit single, Crazy Story, which peaked at number 81 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 2018. The song's vivid storytelling and Von's unique style captured the attention of audiences around the world. He followed up with successful projects, including Grandson, Vol 1, and Levin James, but his promising career was tragically cut short. On November 6, 2020, Von was shot and killed in Atlanta, Georgia, at the age of 26, further highlighting the risks that come with being a successful rapper in a city plagued by gang violence. FBG Duck, born Carlton Weekly, had a similar story. Like King Von, Duck grew up in a neighborhood rife with violence and poverty. He became a prominent figure in Chicago's drill music scene, known for his raw lyrics that reflected the realities of life in the city's toughest neighborhoods. Duck's music resonated with many, and he gained significant recognition within the rap community. However, his success came at a cost. On August 4, 2020, Duck was shot and killed in Chicago's upscale Gold Coast neighborhood, a murder that was part of a larger wave of violence that swept through the city that year. Similarly, Lil Jojo, whose real name was Joseph Coleman, was also a victim of gang violence. Lil Jojo was known for his gritty lyrics that described life in the South Side's Englewood neighborhood. His music became popular in Chicago's drill scene, and he was quickly seen as a leader among his peers. However, his rise to fame also made him a target for rival gangs. On September 4, 2012, Lil Jojo was shot and killed while riding his bike in his own neighborhood. He was just 18 years old, and his death marked yet another tragic loss in Chicago's rap scene. These artists, each with their own unique story, were all victims of the violence that surrounds the Chicago gang culture. They were part of a generation of young people who turned to music as a means of escape from the dangers of their environments, yet their success did little to shield them from the inevitable consequences of their affiliations. The intersection of gang violence and the rap scene is one of the most tragic aspects of the city's cultural landscape. Lil Jeff's death, like those of King Von, FBG Duck, and Lil Jojo, was a direct result of the ongoing turf wars between Chicago's street gangs. The violent gang activity in the city has deep roots, dating back to the early 20th century, when immigrants seeking refuge from discrimination and economic hardship formed tight-knit communities for mutual protection. Over the decades, these communities gave rise to a variety of gangs, each vying for control of territory and illegal markets. By the 1980s and 1990s, gangs in Chicago had become increasingly involved in the drug trade, particularly with the rise of crack cocaine. The city's violent crime rates soared, and gang violence became a major public concern. The proliferation of firearms only intensified the violence, making it more difficult for law enforcement to curb the escalating homicides and shootings. Today, Chicago has an estimated 150,000 gang members across more than 100 distinct gangs, each fighting for control of territory and illegal enterprises. The result is a deadly cycle of violence that shows no signs of slowing down. Gang violence has had a profound impact on Chicago's neighborhoods, particularly those that are most affected by poverty and crime. Local businesses are often extorted by gangs, and many close down as a result of the constant threat of violence. Schools in gang-affected areas also face significant challenges, with students often subjected to intimidation and violence both inside and outside the classroom. The emotional toll of gang violence on families and communities is immeasurable, with many parents living in constant fear for their children's safety. One of the most powerful forces driving gang violence in Chicago is the deeply ingrained culture of loyalty and protection that exists within gangs. This culture extends beyond mere affiliation and often leads to a fierce sense of brotherhood among members. It is this loyalty that often shields gang members from prosecution, as they are unwilling to testify against one another, even when there is clear evidence of criminal activity. The power of this protection network is one of the primary reasons why so many gang-related murders go unsolved, leaving communities to deal with the aftermath of violence without any sense of justice. In addition to street gangs, Chicago also has a long history of organized crime, with groups like the Chicago Outfit operating in the shadows of the city's gang culture. While street gangs are more visible and involved in violent turf wars, the Outfit's activities are often more covert, focusing on activities like extortion, loan sharking, and other forms of organized crime. Despite their differences, both street gangs and organized crime syndicates contribute to the city's enduring problem with violence and crime. The tragic death of Lil Jeff, along with the release of Trap City Rob and the subsequent escalation of gang violence, highlights the complex and dangerous dynamics of Chicago's gang scene. The city's struggles with gang violence, poverty, and crime have created a vicious cycle that has claimed the lives of too many young people, including talented artists who could have changed the course of their communities. The shadow of gang culture looms large over Chicago, and until the underlying issues of violence, economic inequality, and social disintegration are addressed, the cycle of bloodshed is likely to continue.